yesterday with the dramatic moves that we saw, we were quite interested to see what the options were saying this whole time. And what I thought was really interesting is through the entire rally back in your mega cap tech, in your momentum, whatever you want to call that whole bucket, option skew, so that imbalance of put option demand relative to call options stayed very, very high. It did not come down as everything else rallied. And this is a total flip from the rest of the pandemic when call buying had actually spurred a lot of the momentum in these names. We did not see that yesterday. It was bearish sentiment and options all around.
Yeah, and of course we've got the stimulus plan, which is likely to be passed, which means that $1,400 checks are going to go out not to every, not to every household, but to every person. We could see a lot of that money put into the stock market if the data from the last round is any indication. Do you think that will be enough, assuming it occurs again, Amy, to give the market maybe these type of stocks another leg higher?
Yeah, it's a great question, and every time I bring this up, I think institutional investors are like, seriously, how is this a thing? But the reality is, if you look at the last two rounds of these stimulus payments, they were heavily correlated to people going out and buying call options in retail. And this is not just in a GameStop or in a Rocket. This is, across the board in these beloved names that you're familiar with in Amazon or Netflix or Tesla. And one thing that I think will happen again is, what are they going to put their money in? Is it going to be back in these names that they favored during the pandemic, or is it going to be more of the recovery names like in the consumer discretionary, energy, or financial sector? If they go back to their pandemic favorites, this has heavily influenced that option skew I had mentioned earlier. And there are secondary dynamics of that, obviously, which could drive the momentum back in the tech's favor. So I really do think it'll be kind of a wait and see until these checks hit 2 on any incremental rally there.
Yeah, I wonder if these bets into some of these Reddit favorites, if you will, whatever you want to call them, heavily shorted names, do they influence the overall market? Or, Amy, are they kind of their own thing?
So, it's become tricky because I remember at the height of kind of the GameStop madness, that Wall Street Bets forum went from a couple million people on that forum to, I think, 8 or 9. And so the reality is it's really hard to discern at some point, right? Because there are people who are following the forum and placing bets because of it. And then there are people who are watching those people place bets and are playing the momentum off of it. And that's where it becomes a little tricky to say, who exactly is doing what. But I do think at some point it goes past this isolated incident. And obviously that's related to how much short interest is there in some of these names and becomes something larger. I do think at this point, though, that the community of institutional investors as well as dealers have become a little wiser to these situations. So if you look at the speed of some of these situations, for example, Rocket, it came and went much quicker. But, that being said, GameStop is still rallying, and you're still seeing names that are talked about in that forum creating momentum. So I do think that cycle of call buying is something that will probably continue through the end of the year, if not something that's frankly here to stay, as something to watch out for when you look at the options market.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.